Welcome back to Regional Roundup. Well, the fourth Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Programme Partnership Platform was recently held in South Africa. The AU-NIPAD meeting represented a platform where stakeholders gathered to hear updates of various areas in the CAADP process. It brought together representatives from the regional economic communities, ECOWAS and COMESA, Farmers Union, the private sector and civil society. Well, to chat to us more about the conference, I'm joined by Lindiwe, Sibanda, CEO of Food, Agriculture and Resources Policy Analysis. Lindiwe, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, take us through what exactly is FANOPAN.
FANOPAN is a knowledge network, and actually it stands for Food, Agriculture, Natural Resources, Policy Analysis Network. It brings together farmers, researchers, the private sector and government, and that's what makes FANOPAN as a network unique, in that it's civil society in partnership with government, working together to use evidence to inform policy processes.
We've had a few of those where a lot of these bodies have been brought together. How different is your organization going to be?
The uniqueness of FANOPAN and its niche is that I think in the region we are not talking enough about our problems. So it's really a dialogue platform that uses evidence that's emanating from national think tanks. So to me, the uniqueness and the sustainability of this platform is that the users of the network are part of the network. Government is in there to shop for ideas in terms of policy options. Researchers are in there to provide the evidence, and farmers are in there as the most important stakeholder to provide or to highlight the challenges of feeding a nation that has all the resources but has failed to feed itself.
What are some of the problems that Africa is still facing right now?
Fundamentals are really that we have not been able to put our farmers first. We have farmers who are hungry, and as a result, they are not able to produce enough food for the rest of the continent. We are looking at challenges that relate to the whole value chain of the agribusiness sector. We are looking at poor productivity. When we look at our staples, we are looking at maize for this region, where our farmers, our smallholder farmers, are producing about 1 ton per hectare, and yet the potential can be as high as 10 tons. Now, what that is pointing to is poor access to seed, to fertilizer, to technologies. And it means there's something we are not doing right. If you look at the actual production, once the produce is there, we have high post-harvest losses of up to 40% of the yields. The harvested maize is not getting to the market.
Now, you mentioned that farmers themselves don't have enough food to eat. Is there a drive within your company or some sort where, in the past, where we saw that most people were going into professional careers, people were not encouraged to join agriculture or farming in any way. Many were encouraged to basically have an education, go overseas, work for technology sectors, etc. Is there a drive right now to ensure that people are more enthusiastic about the agriculture sector?
Yes, there is a drive, particularly when it comes to the education sector. We do have in countries like Zimbabwe and others in the region, where we have the tertiary education looking at university, but you have your post-secondary school diplomates who go in to train to be farmers, who train to be service providers in the agricultural sector. But I think what has been missing is the linkage of all these vertical interventions, so that there is enough incentive and respect for the profession. And I think the other thing is the income itself, that for those, we've tended to mix up farming for subsistence and farming for profit. And really, for serious farmers, there is enough room in Africa to make a stable living and to go into viable businesses. But that has not been well articulated in our policy implementation processes.
And let's look at Zimbabwe, for instance, right now. We're seeing a scenario where it's an open market. People can go in there, make changes. What would be the first things that you would do in terms of farming in Zimbabwe?
Zimbabwe is a classic case in that when you look at Zimbabwe 1980 to 1990, it was the breadbasket for this region. Now the issue is, what we should be asking is, what did they do right then? I want to believe that what they had there was an ideal architecture for agriculture for the whole region to emulate. We had a functional extension service system, we had a functional research technology adoption network, we had a functional linkage between farming and the private sector, where contract farming was actively promoted by the government. As a result, farmers could produce, sell their produce to the parastatal commodity market, which was able to absorb all the produce, and there were very few losses. So if we go back to those fundamentals, but the challenge that Zimbabwe is facing now is really in the implementation of policies and the agribusiness, revitalizing the whole infrastructure for agribusiness. The whole value chain needs to be revamped.
There are farms in Zimbabwe right now that are not being used or not being used effectively.
Yep.
In those instances, how would you play a role there?
I think the critical issue is those who want to farm should be given the necessary tools for farming. I mean, land has become a topical issue in terms of value, but really the bottom line is those who own the farms have to go into serious farming to produce food. And the critical thing would be what ingredients are necessary for getting people to farm seriously. And inputs are key, both on the input markets and functional output markets. So we need to go back to really look at how do you link these farmers to new modern ways of farming, like contract farming, that will ensure they have access to inputs and they have a guaranteed market, and that will stimulate production.
Which regions does your organization focus on?
We work practically in 13 countries where we have national offices in Southern Africa, but through our partnerships with COMESA, we extend our work into the 19 COMESA member states, which cover Southern and Eastern Africa.
Currently, a lot of countries are affected by the drought that most of the agriculture sector is facing. For a long-term plan, what would you suggest when there is a drought in the country? How does one sustain itself in the agriculture sector?
I think the challenge of drought is something that we have been talking about in the region. And the good thing is that the ongoing dialogue at the United Nations level, the Commission for Sustainable Development, which will be meeting the first 2 weeks of May this year, is focusing on Africa, focusing on land, agriculture, drought, and desertification. And the challenge is there, what policies can we put in place for Africa to recover and to respond to droughts and not deal with it piecemeal?
As a body, what suggestions are you taking to the UN right now?
We need in Africa a platform whereby policies are informed by implementers. I think the biggest challenge is that some of the things we need to do are not big money items, but it's because the policies cannot be implemented because they've not involved civil society in the architecture. So what we are calling for is people-centered policies where we can put our farmers first, we can look at the livelihoods in an African general setting and look at the demand. Particularly when it comes to our staples, there is no reason why Africa should be spending 800 billion to import staple foods.
All right, Lindiwe, thank you so much for chatting to us.
Thank you.